So it's time now, I think, to come back to the God of Israel. Kindlach, you don't really need me. Go back to the original sources. Read it for yourself. Really. There's no magic going on here. No shadows and foreshadows and typology. All that's nonsense.
So we'll take this last call. Call you live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm calling from New Jersey. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi. Thank you for having me on. My question is basically this. You see that in the New Testament, the Gospels in particular, there are prophecies that seem to be reverse engineered into the Old Testament. Like, for example, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And this is a reference to Psalm 22. Now, I don't actually believe these things happened, but what is the best way, or rather the most convincing way, to prove to the Christian that these passages were reverse engineered to fit the Old Testament prophecies?
So you have the opening passage in Psalm 22, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? King David there is speaking about himself in the first person. Whoever wrote the book of Mark takes that and inserts that into Jesus' mouth in the cry of dereliction in the Passion era. So what's the question? I don't even understand the point. I've heard it 1,000 times, but think it through for a moment. Like, why is this complicated? The author of the book of Mark is simply copying and pasting a text. So you're not asking me a question, you're sort of asserting something that's quite correct. All they're doing is they're copying and pasting from Psalm 22 into Jesus' mouth. You're answering your own question. Of course, it doesn't make any sense. Why would Jesus, who is God, say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? What do you mean, who is he talking to? Here's a question I think you can ask. Okay, let me help you walk through this, okay? You can ask a Christian, when Jesus said to have said this, was it a sincere question? That would be a very good way to address that. Because for the Christian, they learned this before they learned Psalm 22. So in Mark 15, that's the Passion narrative, the cry of dereliction, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Actually has it in both Aramaic and translates it. So a question you can ask a Christian is, when Jesus exclaimed this, was this a sincere question? I mean, first of all, who was he speaking to? Christians don't believe, Trinitarians don't believe that Jesus was 50% God and 50% human, but rather he was 100% God and 100% human. Moreover, we have been told in the Gospels that Jesus knew very well that he had to suffer many things and die on the cross and rise on the third day. Openly, he says it. He says it in Matthew 16, to which Peter protests and says, Lord, far be that from you. So what are we talking about here? I think you look at these stories as univocal. They don't cooperate with anything. They don't even cooperate with themselves. But what you want to do with Christians is, when you're confronted with this, is ask the question, did Jesus not know the answer to that question? And did Jesus forsake himself? And did he not know? Moreover, it doesn't even make sense, because if he knew he's going to resurrect and then ascend and live forever on the third day, then that's winning the lottery. The whole story really is nonsensical. I'll ask any of you the question. All of us have contemplated our own death, right? We try not to think about that a lot, but we're all aware of the fact that we're going to die at some point. We hope that we live a long, healthy, happy life, but we know that we have an appointment with the grave. And it's not a pleasant thing, right? We all recall what we looked like 20 years ago. And it worries us. What happened? Time flew. I was just a young fellow. I was so handsome. Now I have trouble getting out of my chair, whatever it is, right? People see feel that they're getting older. They see in the way they look and the way they feel, and if I were to offer any of you that you undergo a crucifixion, which is horrible, it's a horrible way to die. The Romans came up with really quite an unpleasant way to die. But here's the deal. You get crucified, and it'll be the worst Friday of your life. You'll only be on the cross for a whole bunch of hours, just a bunch of hours. You'll be dead before the Sabbath, okay? You spend the weekend in paradise. Remember Luke's conversation that we are told that Jesus had with one of the criminals who were crucified with him. Jesus promises him, the one who believed in him, which is different than Matthew, that you'll be with me in paradise. So you spend the weekend in paradise. And by Sunday morning, so it's really 2 nights, let's just 3 days and 2 nights. But on Sunday morning, you resurrect to a perfect body, and you'll never get old, you'll never get sick, and never die. Never. You'll live happily forever. Every one of you would ask the question, where do I sign up for this? People frequently endure horrible surgeries. I just was in communication with a friend of mine who just went through very difficult surgery, and he's in tremendous pain right now. And that's not so he can live forever. That's just so he can get past the problem he was confronting. Who in the world would not say, you just won the lottery. You just get crucified on Friday, you resurrect, and live forever on Sunday. You never get sick, never get old. Perfect. The story is convoluted. It doesn't make sense. But you should ask the question, was this a sincere question? Did you not know the answer to that question? If you go back to the source in Psalm 22, just read it. Please read it for yourself. David HaMelech is turning to God. Psalm 22 comes after a whole series of chapters in which King David feels isolated, alone, bewildered by his predicament. People who should have protected him sought his destruction. It's not a pleasant predicament to be in. And he says, when my fathers spoke to you, you listened to them and responded to them, and I hear nothing. There's just silence. Please read Psalm 22 for yourself. Just forget me. I hope something goes on here where you will say, you know what, I got to start reading. If you read Psalm 20, just read it from the beginning, you'll see that King David is not speaking about a future prophet, it's someone else. It's about himself, his own predicament, his own feeling of loneliness. Have you ever wondered, is God listening to you? Did you ever feel alone in your life? Have you ever wondered aloud, are you out there? Are you listening? That's what David is saying. It's like the great music in the world just produces all this tension, and then the great music, there's this complete resolution, like in, Havdil Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Just builds and builds until finally in the fourth movement, it's one of the great pieces of music. But all great music has it draws you in, and that's Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is the Cassandra, it's the fireworks. The Lord is my shepherd. I don't know whether I'm walking in the valley in the shadow of death. You comfort me. So that's how it's all completed. So I beg you, if you go to the original text, you'll see David is speaking about his own predicament. Does Jesus really feel that God spoke to his ancestors but wasn't listening to him? Doesn't make any sense at all. It's nonsense, really. And of course, you're quite right. You've answered your own question in that the author of Mark simply copied and pasted those words into Jesus' mouth as though Jesus was saying it. But no, David is saying it as a prophecy about himself. What he's saying ultimately is, if you don't have Psalm 23 with Psalm 22, you'll be lost. Now, Psalm 22 is very famous because King David is going to talk about all these things, referring to his enemies as wild animals. Famously in verse 17, when he's first to lions, as he did earlier and subsequently, as his enemies, the church will change, they pierced my hands and my feet. That's what's really going on in text. One of the things I said to you at the beginning of the show is it's not only that the New Testament is not univocal, even internally, the texts are not univocal. You can have, in an earlier point, you can have Jesus predicting he's going to suffer and die, and he knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly he's going to rise on the third day, but then bang, he just doesn't know. Take this cup, not my will, your will, don't take this cup. Like, what is this prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane? What is he asking for? Don't take this cup, that means, like, don't go through with this. What do you mean don't go through with this? It's not univocal, but each piece, each pericope itself gives you a certain high, but they're not consistent with the other. But most germane is they're not consistent with Tanakh. The innocent cannot die by the sins of the wicked. Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 21 through 23. I mean, read it in context. When you're speaking to a Christian and Mark 15 is raised, the cry of dereliction is raised, what you want to do, just in the way of approaching this, is ask the question, this is how I would reframe it, is when Jesus ask that question, was it a sincere question? And the Christian at first will not get it, because I assure you no Christian has ever heard that question before, but don't let that go. Just keep the conversation structured and just persist on getting it clear. Did Jesus not know what was happening on the cross? Was he aware of it? Did he not know, or did he know? Because he's asking, why hast thou forsaken me? It means, why? Well, does he know? Was it a sincere question? Was it an insincere question? And that's a good way, in my view, to begin to unpeel this onion and get to the core and get to the center of everything. And that is, this is really a copy and paste and makes no sense in the context of the New Testament. Well, Mark himself says, Mark explicitly in chapter 10, verse 45, explicitly says that Jesus dies as a ransom, gave his life as a ransom for sins. So if Mark 10 knows that, why doesn't Mark 15 know that? These are all separate pieces. Each one is designed to give you a different injection. And they don't have to agree with each other, and they don't. They don't agree with each other. So it's time now, I think, to come back to the God of Israel. Kindlech, you don't really need me. Go back to the original sources. Go back to Tanakh. Read it for yourself. Really. There's no magic going on here. No shadows and foreshadows and typology. All that's nonsense. Just read the text in its simple, the pshat. What does it mean? And with that kind of study of our holy oracles, we will merit to witness the coming of the true Mashiach, B'mheira b'yameinu, quickly in our time. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל